Picture this, it's the early 1960s. The world is a chessboard of Cold War tensions. But in Southeast Asia, a different kind of conflict is brewing, one that pits brother against brother. This is the story of the Indonesia-Malaysia Konfrontasi, a war that shaped the destiny of two nations. So, how did it all begin? Let's rewind to 1961. The British Empire, in its final days, is looking to decolonize its territories in Southeast Asia. The plan to merge Malaya, which was already independent, with the British colonies of Singapore, North Borneo, which is now Sabah, and Sarawak. This new, larger nation would be called Malaysia. On paper, it sounded like a great idea. A stronger, more stable federation. But not everyone was thrilled. In fact, one very powerful neighbor was furious. That neighbor was Indonesia, led by its charismatic and fiercely nationalist president, Sukarno. Sukarno saw the formation of Malaysia as a neo-colonial plot. He believed it was just the British trying to maintain their influence in the region by creating a puppet state on Indonesia's doorstep. He called it a neo-imperialist project and famously declared his policy of konfrontasi, or confrontation. His rallying cry was Ganyang Malaysia, which translates to crush Malaysia. But it wasn't just Sukarno. The Philippines also had its own claims to North Borneo and wasn't happy with the arrangement. Inside Borneo itself, there was resistance. A rebellion, known as the Brunei Revolt, broke out in 1962, led by A.M. Azahari, who wanted to create a unified, independent North Borneo state. Although the revolt was quickly put down by British forces, Indonesia saw it as proof that the people of Borneo didn't want to be part of Malaysia. Despite the growing opposition, on September 16, 1963, the Federation of Malaysia was officially formed. For Indonesia, this was the final straw. The confrontation, which had so far been mostly political rhetoric, was about to turn into a real, undeclared war. The conflict wasn't a traditional war with massive armies clashing on open battlefields. Instead, it was a low-intensity, high-stakes game of cat and mouse fought deep in the dense, unforgiving jungles of Borneo. The island, shared by both Indonesia and the newly formed Malaysia, became the primary theater of war. Indonesian forces began a series of cross-border raids from their territory in Kalimantan into Sarawak and Sabah. These weren't just regular soldiers. They were often irregulars and trained volunteers, experts in jungle warfare. Their goal was to destabilize the new Malaysian state, incite local populations to rebel, and prove that Malaysia was a fragile entity that couldn't protect its own borders. On the other side, defending Malaysia was a coalition of forces. There were Malaysian troops, of course, but the backbone of the defense was made up of Commonwealth forces, primarily British soldiers, including the Elite Special Air Service, or SAS, Gurkhas, Australians, and New Zealanders. The fighting was brutal and terrifying. Imagine moving silently through triple canopy jungle, where visibility is just a few feet, the air is thick with humidity, and every shadow could hide an enemy. Ambushes were common. Patrols would go out for weeks at a time, living off the land, constantly on edge. The psychological toll was immense. Both sides were incredibly skilled at jungle warfare, making every encounter a deadly affair. One of the most famous aspects of the British and Commonwealth strategy was the use of claret operations. These were top-secret, cross-border raids into Indonesian territory. The goal was to take the fight to the enemy, to disrupt their supply lines and force them onto the defensive. These operations were highly risky and politically sensitive. If a soldier was captured on Indonesian soil, it could trigger a full-scale war. The soldiers who undertook these missions were among the best of the best, operating under extreme pressure deep behind enemy lines. While the jungle war raged in Borneo, Sukarno tried to open another front. In 1964, he escalated the conflict by launching amphibious and airborne raids onto the Malaysian peninsula itself. Small groups of Indonesian commandos were landed on the coasts of Johor and parachuted into the jungle. This was a massive gamble. Sukarno hoped that the local Malaysian population, particularly those of Indonesian descent, would rise up and join his forces. He was wrong. The landings were a complete disaster. The local population remained loyal to Malaysia and quickly reported the infiltrators to the authorities. The Commonwealth and Malaysian security forces hunted down and captured or eliminated nearly all the raiders. This failed invasion marked a turning point. It showed that Sukarno had fundamentally misjudged the situation. The people of Malaysia were not going to welcome his troops as liberators. The international community, which had been somewhat divided, began to swing firmly behind Malaysia. The failed raids were a huge propaganda victory for the Malaysian government and a major embarrassment for Sukarno. By 1965, the tide was turning against Indonesia, not just on the battlefield, but at home as well. The Indonesian economy was in shambles, crippled by the cost of the confrontation and Sukarno's political policies. Hyperinflation was rampant, and people were struggling to survive. Then, on the night of September 30th, 1965, everything changed. A coup attempt, known as the 30th of September Movement, rocked Jakarta. A group of junior army officers abducted and murdered 6 high-ranking anti-communist generals. The coup was quickly and brutally crushed by a general named Suharto. What followed was one of the darkest chapters in Indonesian history. Suharto blamed the coup on the Indonesian Communist Party, the PKI, and launched a massive, violent purge. Hundreds of thousands of suspected communists and sympathizers were killed across the country. In the chaos, Sukarno's power evaporated. He was gradually sidelined, and Suharto emerged as the new strongman of Indonesia. Suharto had a very different vision for the country. He was a pragmatist who understood that the Konfrontasi was a costly failure that was isolating Indonesia. His priority was to stabilize the economy and rebuild relationships with his neighbors. With Suharto in control, the end of the confrontation was swift. Secret talks began between Indonesian and Malaysian officials. By May 1966, an agreement was reached. On August 11, 1966, the Bangkok Accord was signed, officially ending the 3-year conflict. Indonesia formally recognized Malaysia, and diplomatic relations were restored. So, what was the legacy of this forgotten war? For Malaysia, it was a baptism by fire. The conflict forged a sense of national identity and unity. It proved that the young nation could not only survive, but also defend itself against a much larger and more powerful neighbor. The Malaysian armed forces gained invaluable experience and became a more professional and capable fighting force. For Indonesia, the end of the Konfrontasi marked the end of an era. It was the end of Sukarno's revolutionary nationalism and the beginning of Suharto's new order. A period of authoritarian rule focused on economic development and regional stability. The war also had a significant impact on the region. It led to the formation of ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, in 1967. The founders, including Indonesia and Malaysia, realized that regional cooperation, not confrontation, was the key to peace and prosperity. It is a testament to the healing process that two former adversaries became founding partners in one of the world's most successful regional organizations. Today, the relationship between Indonesia and Malaysia is one of close friends and partners, bound by shared culture, language, and history. The jungles of Borneo are no longer a battleground but a symbol of a shared natural heritage. The Konfrontasi serves as a powerful reminder of a time when things were very different. A painful but necessary chapter in the journey of two nations towards the peaceful coexistence they enjoy today. It's a story of conflict, identity, and ultimately, reconciliation. Thanks for watching. If you found this piece of history interesting, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into the events that shaped our world. See you next time.